Why, hello, and welcome back to another episode of Voice of the Rings. I'm your host and guide, Zollin Ironshield, and this is going to be another one of those breakdowns of Episode 3 of The Lord of the Rings on Prime, or as we call it, or, you know, The Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. Alright, my friends, so today, again, like if you've seen my first two, we're going to make this one a little shorter than the first two, because, you know, it was a lot of work. But we're still going to go through it real quick, and I've got a couple good lore things we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about a little bit of the compression stuff going on with the breakdown here too, and this will be my honest review on things I liked and disliked, just like I explained in the last ones. I have the little counter over here, which I'm going to make a little bit bigger. Basically, the stuff I thought was correct with lore, stuff that I think is a horrible change in lore, or things I liked, or things I didn't like, all that kind of stuff. Again, don't forget, you guys, keep it civil in the comments. Again, this is all my views and my opinions and breakdown. Everyone's going to have different views about everything, right? Again, I go into that very deeply in my other two review videos, episode 1 and 2, so you should know that by now if you've watched my other ones. And anyway, let's have some fun, and here we go. We're gonna go through it here. Again, it is going to have no sound because it is I cannot do sound. So, but you will have some background music from Lord of the Rings Online, which is a great soundtrack as well. Again, we're gonna skip this little intro because we've already talked about it, and I've already said it in the last episode. So let's go ahead and get straight into it. So we start with people are like, well, why are they imprisoning people, not just killing people? Well, because then they can work for them in the sun, right? They can dig the little trench that they're trying to dig to get to a certain location. Where are they digging to? Well, they didn't show us that, so I'm not sure about that one. Like, okay, they're digging a trench. Got it. All right, so anyway, we're going to hop through here with still images. Again, the orcs look really good. I love it how they're practical orcs, so I enjoyed, again, I did a lore video, but I enjoyed the fact that they are practical. They're not CGI, right? They look like the Lord of the Rings orcs from Peter Jackson's adaptation, not CGI'd as much like Azog was in the Hobbit series, right? Which none of us liked very much. He was still cool, but just you could tell it was CGI, right? So anyway, then he finds out, right, once he's there, that his other friends, the other elves, are there. They were caught leaving, basically, the tower, right? The warden and the other elves, a lot of the other elves are there. All right, so I'm like, oh, okay, and his friend, right? All that kind of stuff. That was fine. Again, very whole kind of scary. This is all a side plot made up, right, of what's going on. The orcs were excellent though, so that whole part was fine. There wasn't anything like super fantastic about this part, and there wasn't anything that I was like didn't like, right? So we'll just keep going on. I want to get to the spot that really matters with the lore for you guys, okay? Because we need to talk about the time compression thing. I'm not sure. I see how they're going to do it, but I'm not sure if it's going to be good or not, right? That's what everyone's been worried about, so we'll find out. Then we get Galadriel waking up after she's been saved on that boat, right? So I'm like, oh, okay, right? And then I do like the fact, I'll give a plus to this, he gives her the food and she doesn't quite eat it immediately, which I'm gonna give a like to that, because I hate that in any show when the character just grabs the food and starts eating because they're so hungry, but like that they don't think about it, right? I like the fact that she thought about it, and then of course he makes a joke that it's poisoned for elves, and you know, okay, all right, it was a little funny, but yeah, it wasn't anything negative about that. But again, his character, so far his character's been fine. I don't know who he's gonna be or like what, but later we find out other stuff, but let's keep going. All right, so now we get this. Oh my gosh, you guys. We get the ships. We know the ships in Numenor were just fantastic, and I just love this ship. The ship is so cool. Like, it's such an awesome ship. So, lore accurate for the ship. The ship's amazing. Then we get Elendil, right? And he's awesome. He's a great character, okay? So, enjoyed the character. Great lore. Point. He just really makes me think that character. The actor they picked is just great for it. Now let's talk about their gear. Their gear is fine that they're wearing. The look of it, I like the green. I really like to see that there's green. Remember in the trailer we saw that other armor that was kind of like that weird grayish blue? I didn't really like the color, so I really like the green. So I'm gonna say I like the armor so far. I do like that. There is something a little bit weird about, you know, is it leather? Is it what's it supposed to be? And you know, It's got the little, like, tiles, because it says in the lore that they wore, like, fish scale looking things. So I'm like, okay, all right. Well, anyway, let's keep going. Now we get this whole conversation, which is actually not terribly bad, right? And his lines are really good. So, again, she's kind of doing the whole, you know, stubborn teenager elf routine, which is just weird to me still. But it was better than the other episode. It wasn't quite as miserable. But yeah, it was fine. And again, I gotta say too, just in reason of her character in general, I know these are the lines she's giving us because of what they chose, the writers chose. But she's a really good actress. And also, she definitely fits the look of Galadriel, like, completely. So that's just throwing that out there as a positive. I know I've been ragging on her. I'm not ragging on the actress herself. She's amazing. Like, she's doing a great job. It's the stuff they're giving her I just don't like, because you notice in that one part in the other episode how she acts very gracious when she's talking to Elrond, right, when she first meets him. And I'm like, oh, that's the Galadriel I know, right? And it's just what they're giving her to act with, right? Her lines. So maybe I'm a little bit frustrated at the writers for changing it like that. But again, we'll see how the whole completed thing comes out later. Is she gonna morph into the character we know? We'll see. We'll see. I'm gonna give them a lot of leeway there. Then basically, be at ease. I'm obligated to deliver you safely to my betters. All right. So here's Eladin is a lord. I was thinking, on a side note for lore, you guys, I was thinking Eladin was king at this time, but in Numenor. But actually, I was looking and reading the actual lore from my memory, and I was like, oh, okay, he's the High King of Gondor and Arnor later. Spoilers. Sorry, guys. There might be spoilers in this. Hope you already watched episode 3. This is gonna be spoilers, guys. But then I was realizing he's a High Lord of another, basically of the faithful, and technically Alfarazon would be king at this time, in where they're trying to deliver us the information. But Alfarazon isn't king. He's still an advisor, and that other lady is the king. So I'm kind of wondering if that's the married-in wife of the royal line, Muriel. But anyway, we'll go into that in a second. Let's get to that when we get there, okay? So anyway, let's keep going through this. We see this, you know, she sees he has his dagger. Then we see this great shot. Oh my gosh, you guys. I don't want to give too many points for how amazing Numenor looked in this episode. Again, overall, this episode actually kind of felt slow to me a little bit. But again, I really, really enjoyed the scenery. Like, I can't even express how much the Numenor looked like what I thought Numenor would look like, okay? So, big plus to lore correct Numenor, okay? I won't keep giving points for Numenor lore correct because we're going to see a ton of it in the next 5 minutes. Again, look at that awesome tower, right? They kind of, oh wow, that's a cool tower. Then we see this awesome, all these statues going into the thing, and then we go into the awesome, amazing, again, another great shot of that statue. She basically says, you know, the land of the star, that it's Numenor. Again, that whole scene was good. I like that scene. I like her, like, what she said there, so I'm gonna say I like, okay? And then you move in, and there's this awesome, just, they do this whole scene, right, where they give more than they showed in the, you know, in the trailer. So you get the shot of Numenor. There's the mountain in the background. You guys, that is just, again, like, I'm just gonna give it an enjoyed. I already gave it a lore correct for the island, but super, super, super enjoyed this. Okay, really, really enjoyed how good it was. Again, overall, the entire episode felt a little bit like kind of like a middle episode, right? It didn't really have, I think there should, if the episodes are show, it should be a good beginning, middle, and end with every episode in the series. But this one felt very like, it was a middle. Like, there was no beginning, there was no end. There really wasn't a very massively filled out middle of this episode, except for 1 or 2 parts that were really good in it. But it just really felt like you had to keep up with what was going on, kind of thing. But look at that shot. Oh my gosh, you guys, that's so Numenor. This makes me excited. I loved how this looked. This is Numenor, all right? So just absolutely amazing. And then there's another shot of the entire island, like, city. and it's just like the bay and just so cool. I gotta give points too for the ship. When it comes in, they lower those sails. I was like, wait a second, they're lowering the sails. How could it keep moving in without like a tugboat or someone rowing at the front? And then I saw that there was they probably did it in a way where I would assume the Numenorians, where the wind blows down that area, and they have little tiny sails that are still open at the front of the ship. So I'm gonna like that, just because for a practicality, I thought that was kind of cool. If you notice that right here, there's the awesome waterfall, right? But let's see if I can get to where it shows it. There, see, they have some little tiny sails. You can't quite see them right now, but they're in the very front. When it goes up, you can see them. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, right? That's kind of a cool little effect. And then I like the fact, too, from someone who lives next to ships. I live right near several harbors, and we actually have some old ships that come here all the time that are sail ships, right? Big ones, which is super fun. It's super cool. They don't dock as much to the docks usually, especially in a place that isn't designed for it. They'll anchor out farther away and they'll come in with a small boat, which they do in this. So again, another like, because I thought that was very realistic. That immediately that brought me into the whole feeling of Numenor, because there was more realism like it would be in real life. Does that make sense? It made the fantasy feel more real. Okay, so I like that. I thought it was good. Well done. And then they come on the ship here. Again, everything looks awesome, this whole scene, but I'm not going to keep giving likes for the same stuff that I just talked about. They kind of like, oh my gosh, it's an elf, right? So which makes sense. They probably haven't seen elves in a long time. We're going to get to the more important part here very soon of what I'm talking about, the lore. Again, this whole part is awesome. I'm not going to just keep giving likes for that, but it's awesome. In the Great War, your ancestor stood with Morgoth. She's, okay. Anyway, she starts telling some history that's, I'm pretty sure it's mostly lore accurate from when I heard it. I've only watched it twice, and I've watched it a third time here doing the video for you guys. I'm going to keep watching it, but again, I try to do it as many times as I can so that I can absorb things that I might have missed, or I can try to put together. Again, it did feel a little bit in this episode, it was a little hard to follow with what was happening with the lore, even though I'm someone who knows a lot about the lore. So, that could be a little better. So we'll wait, though, before we get that. Anyway, our people were kin. She basically says all this stuff that a lot of the Numenorians don't like her anymore, which the elves, again, really awesome. But there is a truth to this, all right? So the issue that we have to talk about, though, is the time compression, which is coming up here in a moment. I'm going to bring something up to show you guys in a second. All right, so we're going to keep going here. He sees the forge. That's cool, right? We see a couple more cool shots, and then we see this awesome shot of the town right here, and then the shot of the statue on the top of Numenor building and the beautiful tree of Gondor and stuff. So that's a huge I'm sorry, that's going to be another lore correct, because it looks just like I imagined in the books and in a lot of the drawings by, like, you know, John Howe and stuff. It's just amazing. All right, so now we get this part, right? Ar-Pharazôn, or Pharazôn they put here, but Ar-Pharazôn is, you know, patience. He's like talking out loud. So there's like a meeting going on. I actually like this whole scene. I thought it was pretty well done. Now there's a couple things I didn't like here, so I'll talk about it. This part I liked. All right, I like this where this guy's like, you know, they're busy, and then he's like, an elf's here, and he's like, oh, they'll see you now, kind of thing. Like, oh, that's kind of important. So that was actually a really good, well done part. So then you come in here, and this whole part. Okay, there's likes and dislikes in this part for me. Okay, me personally. So they come in, and basically, you know, there's a little joke that happens here, right? He says kneel, and then she makes a comment that no one kneels in Numenor. I don't know if that is a lore accurate thing. Off the top of my head, I do not remember anything about that in the stories, but okay, let's say that is fine. All right, we'll say that's fine. I'm not going to say I like that or dislike that, even though it was kind of funny, because he's like, sorry, like, all, you know, her friend, the made-up character Halbrand here. And then she goes, Galadriel of the North. I like her big intro. The thing I don't like is her comment about being the commander of the Northern Armies, but that's okay. Again, I'm going to say right here in this whole part that she's just a little bit too... It doesn't feel like, to me, it's just to me, this is my own personal view, but it doesn't feel like to me that Galadriel should be so intense like attacking right now. Like she's all alone. Again, this whole plot's made up, her coming right now, right, to Numenor, this whole plot. But why she'd be so insulting, basically, to the queen or the king, or I guess she's the queen consort or whatever. I disliked it, okay? I disliked it, and I'm also going to give it a lore negative, because I really didn't like this whole part where they start going back and forth, and then he has to be the one to kind of calm him down. Like, come on, she's Galadriel, and this is the queen, or supposedly, or queen consort or whatever, of Numenor. Why are they going at it like they're freaking 10 years old, okay? Do we follow what I'm saying? Again, they needed the tension. They needed the tension, but I think the writers could have done it in a different way. Does that make sense? I think it could have done it in a more respectful way, where there's a tension, and it's less of a direct confrontation, as in them being like, you know, Galadriel's like, I'm better than all of you, and then the queen is like, oh really? Like, it could have been a little bit more subtle than the way they did it. Does that make sense? That's why I'm giving it a dislike, and a lore dislike, because it kind of bothered me, this whole part. It kind of took me out of I was so into the feeling. They had me in the Numenor, oh wow, this is epic, and then Galadriel and the queen are like going at it, and I'm like, you know what I'm saying? So again, I know some people are gonna like that part. I'm not trying to, if you like that part, that's fine. Don't worry about it. Don't feel bad, but don't feel like, oh, Zollin didn't like it. I just personally didn't like that part very much, okay? I just didn't enjoy that very much, this whole little back and forth thing. So we're gonna keep going. Alfarazon, lore accurate. This guy's awesome. I like how he is so far. He's very, very cool. Now, what I want to know is this the daughter? So here's what we need to talk about here. I'm gonna flip to something here real quick. So here's a little thing on Alfarazon. I'll have these linked for you. These are little fandom wiki things. I just grabbed these because they're faster than me uploading my info from my books for you guys. But basically, they already have a picture of him from that. But he fits the character perfectly. Now here's the question: is he married to, right, Talmirian? Again, now this picture is a picture of her. This person looks nothing like the actress in the show there. By the way, I don't dislike the actress they picked for that, but I don't know if she is supposed to be Talmiriel. And the reason for it is, there's a lot of time compression happening right here. And we have to talk about this, because we're going to talk about this in a few minutes. But basically, Eladin and Arpharazon are the same age. He was born in this second age, 3-1-19, and Alfarazon was born in the second age, 3-1-18. He's a year older. So they are the same age, so that totally works for them to be there together. But now we talk about another thing. If we jump to the downfall of Numenor, right, which is in the year right there, the second age, 3-3-19, okay, that's the age. Then you go to the siege of Eregion, right? You go to the siege of Eregion. I'm just going to say it like that because that's how I've always said it, so I'm just going to go with that. I know the show guy said Eregion, but anyway, moving on. When they were attacked by Sauron, sorry, spoilers, this will probably happen in this season or the next season, but everyone should know this. This is the normal lore. They were attacked in the year 1697, and it was destroyed. 1697, you guys, and Numenor's fall was in 3-3-19. So realistically, where they are in the Numeorean plot of Season 3 is there sometime a couple years before this event, right? I'm not going to say the exact time, but you guys, that is a gap time compression. If these are happening simultaneously in this series, like within a few days of each other, there's a time gap compression of, I think I did the math here already, I think it was 16, it's 1,600 years ish, you know, to that point. Oh, I just ruined my little calculator, no, but yeah, it's really, really crazy. There we go, fixed my little thing. But yeah, so 1,600 years compression. If these are happening at the same time, they're doing a time compression of 1,600 years, okay? Numenor falls that much later with the whole corruption of Sauron. So that is a massive time compression. And this is the thing a lot of us Tolkien fans are worried about with time compression. So I am actually going to give a big lore dislike for that time compression. That's huge, you guys. And I also really don't like the fact, honestly, I understand that Galadriel is being brought here for the sake of the story plot, because they're making her one of the main characters in this season, that she came here. But I don't think at this time she came to Numenor at any point that I can think of. So I almost would have rather seen the characters come as themselves, because as that you can already see, they're kind of moving around the story. We have several main stories, right? We have Galadriel with the elves and Lindon, who are now, they tied that into Numenor. Then we have the hobbits, right, that are kind of made up, added over on the side. And then we have the humans of the Southlands, which are basically in Mordor, right, or Harad, those areas, with the elves, right, the Watch, which is also a made up story. But so we have 3 different stories. They could have had a 4th. They could have had Isildur and Elendil as their own characters. They didn't have to bring Galadriel over here, but I understand what they did for storytelling's sake. They wanted to make it easier to bring things in. But again, I'm gonna have to give that a lore discorrect, because that she shouldn't really be here. But again, there's some good stuff about this. So anyway, let's go through this now. Oh, and that character, who could this be again? I already said that, but I think it might be Miriel, because she marries, if you go to the family line here and you look at the bottom, Tar Miriel is married to, basically, I think he forces her in the book, which is kind of terrible, but because he wants to be in power, Farazan, all right, which is the other character. But again, she seems like she's in full power here on the show. So there's a little bit of confusion there. They kind of changed leadership somehow in the storytelling, so a little bit confusing. It's a dislike because I don't really like that. So anyway, now that I've gone through all that and gave in all my dislikes, let's move on to say some good things here that I enjoyed. It's because it was given to you by the elves. This comment is weird, because after I was reading some more lore, they were friends with the elves, and the Valar gave them the island, I thought. I don't think it was the elves that gave them the island, but anyway. And then she's, gets stubborn, her back up. Again, this is the whole dislike I disliked. Our ancestors were not giving anything, and the way she says it. Again, I don't mind this character, and also I think her dress is really cool, so I'm gonna say a plus to the dress. I just enjoyed it. I think it looks really cool. I love the gold and blue, but I even thought the crown thing was rather interesting, very cool. But her acting is good, but again, I don't think it's the actresses. I don't think it's the actors. I'm pretty sure it's the writing, you guys. Like I'm not enjoying the writing in this episode quite as much. Some of it's good though. I will explain some writing that I enjoyed, okay, with their lines. So we'll keep going. So then he kind of interrupts them and says, hey, you give us a few days, and Farazan, who this is good for first. I enjoyed this. Okay, I'm gonna put it in enjoy. Farazan basically says, yeah, let's give it a, blah blah blah. And he he's like, we can talk about it, kind of thing. And he is very sly in the story, very very good, very diplomatic in a sneaky way. All right. So anyway, I have a feeling what they're gonna do is he's gonna usurp her somehow, take her power, even though. So I'm not sure if she's a real character or a made up character, and he might just take it over, and then Eladin will, he's going to lead the people against the Valar, and Eladin's going to take the faithful Numenorians and go to Middle-earth and found Gondor and Arnor, right? I see where they're going. So that the lore isn't a total mess there with the story plot. If they do it correctly, it'll make sense. So I see where they're building to, okay? And then she says, I won't be a prisoner. And he said, I wouldn't make a prisoner of an awesome, basically he makes half joke, half, respecting her. And it was, that whole part was good. So that's why I gave a little like there. So we're going to hop through this a little faster, because I don't want to make this an hour and a half review of this episode. Basically he gives a hug to Eladin and says, thank you for your help. And he snags the dagger, which my friend Jethros called, by the way. As we were watching it. He grabs the dagger, gives it back. He gives her like a handshake, and he hands her the dagger, and she's like, oh, well, thank you, kind of thing. And he's like, I know, I'm amazing. Okay, it's a little corny. That whole part, I'm not going to say I disliked or liked it, because it was a little both. And then it would be wise to resolve this matter swiftly. So apparently she has some paranoia against an elf coming from like a prophecy, which we'll see later too. I don't know what that's coming from, so... Look at the gold. Oh man, it looks amazing though, you guys. Oh, so good. And then originally of a noble line, they basically say, who is he? Now a sea guard with a son. Again, what they mean by a noble line is, I was reading here to make sure, he is one of the lords of the Anduni, right? And basically, they're kind of a people that have, they're another part of the royals, I think, but they're kind of their own thing, and they live on the other side of the island because at this time they're kind of been pushed out by the previous king. Someone reinstated them, one of the kings, and then anyway, I don't want to go into too much lore in this video because I could do a whole video on it if you guys want me to. But basically, it does make sense what they're doing in the episode. There are some lore accurate tie-ins. There are some things they're messing up, but there's some tie-ins here, so that makes sense. But by the way, Tar Elendil is a different person than Elendil, okay? They're the same. They are different people. Tar Elendil is someone that was the king in the Second Age, and he died in 751, where Elendil is now in the Second Age, and he was born in 3119. So many, many years different. So don't get confused with those two things, by the way. So I will get rid of this one, but just so you know, I'll have these posted in the comments down there for you guys. But if you want to read and look through them, they're actually really well. These are really well made information things. Yeah. So let's keep going. So anyway, they talk about him a little bit. That was fine. It's like, okay, they gave us some background. Again, I kind of wish some more of that. The ships, again, awesome, awesome, awesome. I already gave a point for the ships for lore accurate, but they are so cool, you guys. The ships are amazing. I love how they look because the ships were described as amazing vessels in the books. And these things are amazing. They're like just a little bit cooler than like what we'd have in real life. Though we have some really cool ships in real life. I've seen some. They're pretty amazing. Even back in the medieval era. But they're really fancy, right? It almost has that look too of the fancy fantasy look of like how they did like Prince Caspian's ship, right, in the Narnia series movie. So that is pretty darn cool. Do you see my when someone came in and delivered me a corn dog as they wave in the background and totally catch me off guard. Anyway, we'll keep going. We'll leave it there as a fun little blooper. So the ships are really cool, like the Narnian ship, right? So they had in that. They're a little bit more streamlined than the Narnian ship, which I like. And they basically are having a race here, which I really loved. And they show Isildur, right? With him. I don't know with this character. I don't like or dislike him yet. I liked his acting. I thought he was good. I don't know. I think he'll probably fit the look of the king later. We'll see. Now, they give us a shot of the island. This whole part I liked. I'm going to give a like because I really enjoyed this whole part of this race. Very beautiful. Again, the scenery was awesome in this episode, you guys. It was so good. And they show him already being a good leader where their whole point is that his friend gets launched off, but he pulls the wrong thing, and then they all bring him in. And basically, I think because of that, they lose this, like, whatever this challenge is or whatever, right? But again, look at the ships. Look at them. They're just awesome. Look at the water. Okay, you guys, the graphics in this whole part were just awesome. Okay, so again, I can't quite tell if there's CGI there. I think there is. There has to be, I would assume. Because I don't think these ships were actually made for the movie. That'd be really cool, but I don't think they were. But that's really good. So maybe that's where the money went in this series right there. Then we go to the island, and he says something about the sea is always right, and they're like, and they repeat it, and I'm just like, okay, I guess they're just trying to show up a thing there, right? Like a respect thing. So I was like, okay. Then there's this whole conversation where basically his sister comes up. I love this part. This made me laugh because I have my own awesome sister. But he goes up to the horse and she's like, instead of giving her a hug, right? And then of course his friends are all giddy and silly around his sister, but his other friend kind of pushes him away to not be annoying. So that part was fine. They say something about Imrahil, by the way, one of the characters' names, Imrahil. And since now that they're compressing time so much, I'm curious if the kid's name that's Imrahil is going to be the Imrahil that we know who is the Prince of Dol Amroth, basically, and who's kind of under the kings of Gondor and Arnor, but they have their own city of Dol Amroth. I'm curious if he is supposed to be that Imrahil, all right, as a young kid. If they're time compressing this much as possible, or maybe he's an ancestor of that Imrahil. We'll see, maybe like his father. You know what I mean? Who knows? And then we get a great shot of the trees. In fact, that whole part I enjoyed. So I'm going to say I liked that part because I did. Then we see the tree. It's so good, you guys. This whole part, seeing this garden and the tree. Oh my gosh, loved it. It's just, it gets a lore point too because it was really, the visuals in this episode were great. Then you see this. She basically talks to him, has him come for a meeting. And basically they say, what else does your name mean? Elf friend, right? Kind of thing. Good lore point. I'm going to say a lore accurate because his name does mean elf friend in in Elven. It actually says it right here, if you're curious, right here, right? In Quenya, elf friend. That's what Elendil means. So that was cool. That was pretty cool. So anyway, we're going to hop through here a little bit faster because we're going a little too long in this area. They have a whole conversation, and again, through elves have been unwelcome. Again, I could do so much. I could do 3 hours in this one episode because there's a lot packed into it, and yet it felt yet the episode felt slow, which is weird because when I go through it, I'm like, oh, there's a lot of actual lore info in here, but the way they paced it, I don't know. It was paced a little bit better though than episode 1. So, and of course, episode 2 I loved because there's dwarves. But yeah, anyway, moving on. I know I'm a little bit biased towards dwarves, just a little bit, in a good way. And the sea is always right. He says something about that comment again. Maybe that's some saying that's for the faithful that they say that. You know what I mean? Maybe that's to like lead into the fact that the sea is going to eat Numenor later. Maybe, I don't know. Again, his character is perfect. She's also pretty epic. Given the circumstances, I did not believe I'd be must. So anyway, she's annoyed he brought an elf to the island. So I don't know why that's such a huge deal, but apparently they're making it a huge deal because they don't like them, right? And then we get the map that basically shows exactly where they are. They are in the southern lands. So if we look at this map real quick, again, I'm really happy in number 3 that we got to see a map again. They're not just abandoning the map thing. So big like, they're not abandoning the map thing from episode 1. That is where that hill over here, right there, that is going to be Minas Tirith in the future. Osgiliath will be here, and Minas Morgul or Minas Ithil and will be built here in this pass. And they're somewhere down here at the bottom of Mordor in the Southlands. So they're assuming the Southlands are inside Mordor, right, in the Second Age here, which is kind of cool and kind of makes sense. So again, remember, we know the elves were watching them because a lot of these people joined Morgoth in the wars, right? So that's good. So we're gonna move through here. This whole part is interesting. I like the fact that the orcs can't be in the sunlight. He goes, and he runs back underneath the shade thing. So they're like, oh, okay, right? They're talking a little bit, trying to think about how they're gonna escape, that kind of stuff. Again, the orcs are awesome. Then they have this whole conversation about how they're gonna escape, and then the orcs come out, right, and they confront them. They basically have this big thing about this tree, right? The main elf guy doesn't want to cut the tree down. Okay, there is a thing that elves really like trees, so I understand that. But then basically the one orc leader comes out and goes, hey, I like how much spunk you have. It's basically what he says. Whole part's really actually pretty awesome because I thought they were going to show how orcs were like, they're kind of good. And they didn't do that. And I was very happy because that would have been like, right? We just had a whole orc lore video about that. In Lord of the Rings, orcs are not the same as orcs from other series. I have a whole comparison video if you're curious and want to go watch that. The orc differences between like Tolkien's orcs and like World of Warcraft or D&D, right? Little side note, the big difference is World of Warcraft and D&D are more neutral races, where Tolkien's orcs are pretty much inherently evil. They're just slaves. They've been corrupted. They're very, very bad, right? You're rarely going to get one doing something in a good, unless it's for a greedy reason, right? So anyway, he basically, you hear, and he shows it's real water, and the guy's like, okay, and he drinks some, right, to test it's not poisoned, and then he gives it to the other main character here, right? And he drinks some, and then he gives it to his friend, and basically what happens is the orc takes his knife out really fast and cuts his friend's throat, which is horrible, right? And they're all laughing, the orcs, showing how evil they are, right? And then his friend dies. And then he says, I'll cut the tree down, and he's really saying that because he's trying to get it. And this guy's really angry, right? Rightfully so, but he can't really do much because there's like 40 orcs in front of him, and he's tied up with a chain. So he goes to cut the tree down, basically, and they wanted to see out. So he kind of gets to check out the information, and basically, I guess he really starts cutting the tree down. I thought there was going to be battle right then, but they didn't do that. So we'll move on. So there's a great shot of the tunnel. They're digging that trench with the little overhang they're putting up so they can travel quickly between areas without sunlight. Because at this time, there's no volcano, there's no Mount Doom spewing out stuff in the sky to block the sun for them, right? That's a lore. That's a pretty cool thing. So again, I'm going to put a positive for that. And that whole and I'm gonna give a positive too because the fact that orcs are so evil. Like, that's good. That's what the orcs are supposed to be. Then we get to see some cool armor again. Oh, that armor! I really like the armor, the blue and gold. Awesome. Another enjoy. I thought it was good. And then running around, and now you see this smile is great. Like, I do like the whole haha. And then basically she's sneaking around. They're trying to find her, and then the queen basically sends Eladin to be her guard now. They have a whole conversation. And about, it's really actually really well done, this whole conversation. I really like this conversation. I'm going to say like. I really liked it a lot. There's a whole thing about, she's going to wants to take a ship, but he's like, again, remember, this is all made up, because Galadriel shouldn't be here. But basically, he says, oh, you know, but he basically tells her that she looks just like his daughter and son when they're being arrogant, basically. And I was like, good for him. Except, again, that's a dislike for the fact that I don't think Galadriel should be like that at this point, because she's already thousands of years old. It's not like she's a young elf, guys. She's not young, okay? I think that's a lot of people are thinking. They're thinking a lot of people who are like, oh, she's really young, right? Compared to the Galadriel we know in Lord of the Rings. No, she's not. She's already super, super old at this point. This is like someone, let's say, someone that is, excuse me, the alarm's going off. This is like someone who, let's say, who's like was 60 years old, and then later they're 62. Like they're not young, guys. It's not like it's someone who's like 15 and then originally they were 60, right? In later in time. No, it's realistically in time frames of how old she is. It's like someone who was 60, and then suddenly, you know, and then like we're now, and later she's like 62 in Lord of the Rings, right? If you're saying in comparison to elf, you know, compressing elf time, right? So she's not young, okay? I don't think she'd be this arrogant at this point in her life, but you know what? Again, that's the writer's choice. You're back, you know. He said you'll be put back in chains immediately, and then he's really good to her, and then she's like kind of frustrated, and then she has a good conversation here that I actually did like. I do like their conversation where, you know, he's really good, and then he speaks Elvish to her, and then that really like, whoa, she's like, whoa, that's awesome, right? Like, you can tell, like, this whole part is really well done. So I actually really like this part, this second half of the conversation. Really well done. Her acting was wonderful. His acting was good. I like this part with the Elvish. He basically says there's lots of people that still respect you and this island, still taught in the Hall of Lore. Now, an interesting thing to point out is that he also has that other Tar Elendil from thousands of years before him was a scholar, and it's interesting how they put that into him more a little bit. So I think that was interesting. So he says, why don't we go for a ride? And she's like, on a horse? And she's all excited, which is great, right? And then we get this amazing shot of Numenor, and it's just like, wow, that is just amazing, right? And the horse traveling, right? And then they get this awesome horse, right? That my sister pointed out that this is in a very, very, very rare breed and a very expensive. It's like $150,000 to buy one. Seriously, like one of these horses in real life. But again, beautiful, interesting Arabian type breed of horse. And then they do a slow-mo, which is excellent, but it's like 3 or 4 seconds too long. So it's fine here, and they show the back of her the tassels, and then they like slow-mo. That's just a little too long for me. So I got a like and a dislike, because like the slow-mo was good for the first like 5 seconds, and then they did about 5 seconds too long. So that was just my opinion. And then they showed this awesome shot of this awesome castle, which is basically where he stays, where the faithful stay, right? And there's like a library and all this stuff. Again, really cool. This whole part is really amazing. I really enjoyed this. So very cool. Anyway, let's get through this a little bit more here. So I really like that. And then he tries to, this is very interesting. Basically what they explain here is that there are crafting guilds, and he needs a crest to be able to craft any steel, which is very interesting to me. This whole part, this is very interesting to me. I'll shape, you know. So that was really cool. I liked that. I'm gonna say liked. I'm not gonna say it's a lore thing, but I just liked it. I thought it was cool. And then he's eating this delicious, awesome seafood, which actually looks so good. And then basically he gets he talks to these guys, and he's very good at talking. This, you know, whoever this made-up character is. But basically, you know, he makes a joke, and then they're really mad at him for making the joke. And then he's like, "Oh, that's okay. I'll buy all the drinks on me." And they're like, "Oh, okay, all right." You know what I mean? So now everything's good. And then you see right here, he steals his crest, right? Because he's like, "I want to become you." So obviously, he's not really that great of a person, this character. So he walks away, and they're like, "Oh, you think we wouldn't see this, right?" And he goes, "Oh, basically, sorry. You know, here, I'll give back. I don't want any trouble." And they're like, "Oh yeah," and then now they're becoming the evil guys, right? And basically they go to punch. They punch him once or twice, and then he basically just goes berserk. He just goes berserk, and he just beats them all down. And then of course the guards come and make him look like he's the one that attacked everyone, right? So that's the whole part. Good. It was a. I like the fact that he fought back, but so it's a like and dislike that part, because there's parts I liked and parts I didn't like in that. But now let's get to the stuff I really wanted to talk about, you guys. Okay, so here's what I really wanted to talk about. The library of Elros, right? Which is Elrond. And then they keep going through this library, and they see this awesome, this tapestry or painting, I think it's a tapestry, of Elros and Elrond, basically because he chose mortality, his brother, right? You knew Elros, he says, right? And then they have a little conversation. Remarkable. She's like, "I knew his brother better." This is the more the Galadriel I know. So again, I'm gonna say this whole part is a lore correct feeling for me, but there is some stuff that I did not fully follow here. So basically, he says that thanks to our last king, it was because of him this place wasn't torn down. Blah blah blah. Right? And then he was loyal to the elves. Right? He says, yeah. It is loyal. Now here's the thing. I have a feeling what they're gonna do is Eladin. They're talking about him, right? Because this can't be Elros. At first, a lot of us in my family thought, are they talking that Elros is still alive? Well, Elros shouldn't still be alive at this point. Elros was one of the first kings of Numenor. That was thousands of years. Even with the compression, that wouldn't make any sense to have him still alive, right? Because he only lived a couple. 5, 6, I forget exactly how much off the top of my head right now, but that wouldn't really make sense. So I have a feeling he's talking about himself without her knowing that he is still loyal, being him, that he's kind of the exiled king right now. That would be interesting if they did like that. Again, in the lore, I'm looking through the lore, I don't know if he actually necessarily was the king of Numenor, right, at that time. But at first I was thinking this whole part, wait a second, I thought Elendil was the king of Numenor. But I think I was mixing it up with the fact that he is the high king of Gondor and Arnor later, right? But he does have a royal title. He is the lord of, as I showed you, the other place over here, right? So, this one, right? And again, I'll have these linked for you. But again, he was the high king of the Dunedain, Arnor, and Gondor, right? When they founded Middle-earth, he ruled from... when he got rule from 100 years later. Yep, because that would have been 2. Yep. So exactly 121 years. So he lived 322 years, as again he was blessed as one of the Numeoreans. He did have royal line in him, but again, you can read all this later. Let's not go too much into that because it'll just get confusing for people. But again, lore wise, again, that's why I gave a lore accurate point. There is some stuff that's tying in. I understand what they're going to do. But again, we already talked about the time compression issue. That's what I'm worried about, guys. The time compression issue, okay? And then, of course, we see, oh, that symbol. He has some old info on it in the libraries from Elros. And basically, so, like, there's some... I'm going to give a dislike here because, like, why the heck did none of the elves know this? I'm glad Elros had information on it, or some prisoner he said that was in a dungeon had information on it. But it seems kind of silly that they finally figure out that that symbol's supposed to be Mordor, the Southernlands. They don't know it's Mordor yet. But he's like, oh no. And basically they're tying in the fact that they're going to have to work together to help save the Southernlands, which we'll see. We'll see how that goes, how they do that with the story. But anyway, again, cool table, by the way. Points for the table. I really like the table. Again, this whole library looked amazing. I really enjoyed this part. This is really there's a lot compact in here, so I really highly recommend you go watch it yourself and listen a few times. And if you're confused, go look some stuff up with the lore to kind of see time frames. But again, we're now going to get back over to the Hobbits. They're doing a celebration thing. I'm not going to like or dislike this part. The Hobbits have become a little bit more endearing to me. I've enjoyed them a little bit more, and this whole part is kind of hilarious. So I don't dislike it. But I don't necessarily like it too much. This part's really cute, though. So I'm going to say I like this part, though. I enjoyed this. I thought he's such a good, like, husband to her. Like, it's so cute as a hobbit. I really like this whole part. I thought it was very sweet. But we're going to move on. I mean, some people might have thought it was too corny. It's a little corny. But then they're having basically a memorial to remember all the hobbits they've lost. And they basically explain the fact that if you get behind, you get left behind kind of thing. It's like, oh, wow, that's a little dark. But anyway, first she kind of like bullies her friend and blackmails her friend into helping her get a star chart from the old Hobbit's map, right? Again, it was funny. It's like, if I was being really harsh on it, I would give it a dislike I'm going to just give it a harsh on it. But again, some of it I did like. I thought it was funny. But again, it just kind of seemed discombobulated information. But then basically the whole part is they're just stealing the map piece. It's like, okay. Again, it's more for comedic relief, I think. And then they're reading names off of people that they lost in the past, right? Kind of thing. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. Moving on, right? And again, I don't want to go too much longer than this. So this whole part really has nothing to do with the lore. I don't really dislike it, but it really had nothing to do with the lore. They're basically just kind of building your loving of these characters, these hobbits, more like their hardships kind of thing is the idea, I think. And then he goes to this map and he starts reading the map. This actor is amazing. I will give this whole part a like because he's just an amazing actor for Meteor Man so far. Again, I still think my guess is he's probably one of the Blue Wizards. But we'll see. We'll see what he is. So basically he starts it on fire by mistake while he's enjoying looking at the map with the light of the fire. And then he runs in and basically falls into the crowd, falls into one of the blankets of their overhangs, and they're all like, what is that? And then he goes, he calls out her name, right? Nori. Which, again, by the way, I'd like to point out, some people have made it very clear that Nori is an abbreviation of Eleanor, right? So I understand that. And Nori, for her, actually has grown on me for her. Again, I still think the writers should have realized how taking a main character from the stories, which Nori the dwarf, right, and putting it onto a hobbit was probably not the smartest idea because of coincidence. And again, a lot of people are like, oh, well, it's Eleanor. So again, just so you know, I'm going to start calling her Eleanor more so there's not a confusion between the dwarf and her. So she's Eleanor, right, the hobbit, right? But they call her nickname is Nori, right, which is the nickname abbreviation of Eleanor. So anyway, Eleanor, which I'm going to start calling her that more because it's going to get confusing with there being a main character named Nori the Dwarf. Or I'm going to have to say Nori the Hobbit, Nori the Dwarf, okay? We're going to have to do some distinction there because the writers really probably should have thought about that, oh, well, the abbreviation is Nori. Oh, wait, that's a main character in the Hobbit, right? That's one of the main 13 dwarves, right? So yeah, again, don't dislike it. I like her character. I'm really starting to get to like her character. She's a really good actress, and I really like the lines they're giving her. And again, it's just someone that's more endearing. Again, she has nothing to do with the lore. I know that, and that is like, but it's enjoyable at least as a side thing. Again, they just wanted to bring hobbits in because, it's hobbits. They wanted to have hobbits. They just couldn't help themselves but have hobbits, right? Anyway, the old guy basically says, the one lady says we should expel her because she let someone come in. And the old guy goes, oh, she's young. Let's just let it slide. So it was good what he said. I like that whole part. So I'm going to say I like to that part. I actually am not sure I totally like the whole depressing story part, but we'll see. With them telling bad stories. And then the mom gets kind of mad at her here, and I understand why, but I just liked it because she's so mean. It was really way too intense. But then she says, oh, my darling, at the end, and then she's nice about it. But she's obviously just angry. But again, okay, whatever. All right, let's get to the end here. So then we get this scene where they're showing Galadriel and someone else fighting somebody off, which is kind of interesting. They're basically showing that these people remember the stories of the elves and humans fighting Morgoth. Okay, so they show Morgoth and Galadriel. And it's like, oh, okay, right? And they know who Galadriel is, that she's one of these people that were in the war. Again, they're doing that because there's a little bit of a lore dislike there, I'm sorry, because Galadriel really wasn't like one of the main warrior leaders. But I do like the fact, I'm going to do a like, because I think the fact that they used it as bringing her to this island. So again, these are probably the faithful Numenorians, is what this whole group of people is with Elendil, and he's kind of their leader. He's the lord of the other side of the land, which does, in the articles I will have linked down there, will explain that a little bit. So there is some lore positive stuff this whole scene. So I'm going to do a lore positive for this whole conversation. Basically, they're talking about stuff. And it's actually a really good thing between the sister and brother and the dad, right? He's a little too intense for me. I don't like how he gets mad and tells her, I'm not talking to you, and to the boy, I'm not talking to you. And it's like a little extreme, but it's fine. Now, I'm kind of curious with her, who is she? She can't be the person that marries Alfarazon, because she wasn't the daughter of Eladin. And you look in the family line, it's not. So that wouldn't be it. I thought that was at first, possibly. But anyway, I really like her character. I like this little family thing they've got going. I wasn't sure. I was a little worried when I heard there's going to be like this family thing going on. And I was like, oh, I hope it's actually good. And it actually is pretty good. So that's a like, right? Again, there's a lot of stuff I actually liked in this. But overall, I got to say, though, still, I'm going to give a dislike to just the entire episode for the fact that it felt really, really slow. I don't know what it was, that it just felt like it, again, like I explained at the beginning, it felt like there wasn't really a beginning, it wasn't really an end of this episode. It was kind of supposed to be the in-between of two episodes. Does that make sense? And it has a lot of good information and a lot of stuff they're trying to tie in, but again, they're trying to tie in their made-up plot lines with the lore plot lines to bring in the time compression plot lines to, like, there's so much going on, it's hard to follow. I had to watch it a second time to really follow and understand things, right? So I could talk to you guys about it. And then he goes, I wasn't talking to you. And it's like a little too extreme. And she's like, oh. And then someone comes in. And then basically he gets another chance because he's like, you can watch the part. It's cute. It's basically, she's like, oh, I got brought to, to join the whatever guild, right? A different guild. He's like, I didn't know they'd re-accept that, right? And she's like, well, Isildur told me to reapply. And he looks back and he's gone. Isildur left. And he's like, oh, okay. Well, darn. And then we get the conversation here with Galadriel talking to him, who's now in prison because, remember, he got captured because he attacked those men who attacked him first. But, then she finds out he's a king of the Sutherlands. What? In the middle of nowhere. That is very quick. Okay, so sorry. Lore dislike and dislike. Because what in the heck? Why is he just a random king? All right. And I was having a conversation with one of my cousins about this. Well, that's really, really, really insane coincidence that Galadriel jumped off a ship in the middle of the ocean, found a raft of people who happened to have a king from Mordor and the Sutherlands on it that was also running away from his lands. And then they get found by Eladin, one of the royalty, who becomes the kings of Gondor and Arnor later. That's a lot to take in. Again, this conversation actually wasn't terrible. And, it had some good building. Some people are guessing he might be like the Witch King later. It's like, oh, that would be kind of sad because he's kind of a cool character right now, right? But maybe that's their goal. But now he's kind of like, it's kind of a similar Aragorn situation. He's like afraid that his bloodline, he's like, I have no strength because my people followed Morgoth, right? That kind of thing. So we'll see. I kind of think he's a made-up character. I don't know if he will be the Witch King. I think he might just be some king that fights against. Maybe he'll die tragically. Who knows, right? Ours of the Works did something great. Blah 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 blah. Some of it was good. Great shot of Numenor here at night. Really really cool shot. Like, look at that. That's so cool. So that's definitely a like for me. And then you get the Queen Consort, or whatever her title was. Again, don't know if she's supposed to be the married person so Alfarazon has power, or if she's just a made-up character for the show. No idea. She's literally brought in episode 3. We still don't really know. I really would have liked more information to know. So that is a dislike, because I'm like, what the heck? Where is this information? You're leaving us hanging. Are we going to get more? I guess we'll get more information in episode 4. But usually when you bring a character in the first episode, you don't leave us hanging all the way to the next episode. But that's okay. And then basically she goes, oh, you know, her father basically, oh, an elf is here, like the prophecy said, blah, blah, blah. She seems really upset or nervous about it. Don't know why. All right, so we'll move on with that. Then we get the last scene with the hobbits. They're starting their migration thing, which this scene is, I actually like the scene and I called it, right? She's like, oh, where are my friends? You know, the family, right? With Eleanor's family, or Nori, the hobbit, right? You know, I better go check on him right at the back. And then, yeah, he can't pull the cart with Eleanor, right? They're having a really hard time getting the cart pulled. And basically, they hear something, and I call it. I'm like, oh, it's gonna be the wizard, right? It's gonna be Meteor Man. He's gonna help him, right? And basically, it's really cute because, can we bring him? The younger daughter of Eleanor's little sister says, can we bring him, right? And he says, friend, like, really, like where he's getting better with language or whatever, right? Again, I don't know why he can't speak. This still bothers me if he is one of the Maiar, because they could all speak perfectly when they got here. That's in the lore, but that's okay. We'll let it slide because I think we'll see what their goal is here in the storytelling. But basically what happens is he's pushing the cart for them on the back. He does give me a little bit of a vibe. Okay, I have to say this because it gave me the vibe. I'm not really a huge, I don't watch a lot of Game of Thrones, but it did give me the Odo vibe, just a little bit. Not quite as much, because he's not as, take this the wrong way, but not as dumb as Odo. He seems more intelligent, just where he can't speak their language, this character. But he did give me that vibe, because he's like pushing a cart where Odo's like pulling the one main character right in the thing the whole time. But again, it is different. It's not exactly the same. It's not like a direct copy, but it gave me that vibe just a little bit. But again, this part at the end is very cool, and you can see him traveling off. Basically, they're basically coming from Rune, going north and above Mordor, heading towards like Rohan and up, which is where the hobbits will originally be in the Third Age. So I think that's where where they're going. They're like, oh, these are where the hobbits originally, sprouted out of nowhere and traveled, that kind of thing. That's their idea of that. So again, that part I liked, so I'll give it a like. Now we see this big battle happen, right? And this is basically the start of the episode, and they're trying to pull him into the shadow, right, with their chains, and the elves are trying to make him not. They have an actually pretty awesome battle that I'm going to say I like. There's some stuff I did not like here. They bring in this warg. Okay, you guys. I feel like the animation is lacking here. I'm going to say dislike, okay? And I'm also going to say a lore incorrect thing. They make the warg's eyes so big, it almost looks like they're in, like he's a crazy Tasmanian devil. Like he's like a cartoon. And I don't know if that bothered you or not. Some people might like that. So I'm not trying to, if you like that, that's fine. I'm not trying to insult anyone who liked it. But it bothered me. I didn't like how they made the work look like that. It should have looked like an actual animal, not like something with big cartoon eyes, right? Again, I don't know if I could get a shot with its crazy cartoon eyes, but yeah, see, that's a really good shot. And again, it seems like the CGI to me was lacking here. But look at its eyes. The eyes are just too big. They're it's freaky, yeah, but it almost looks like the eyes are endearing, but the rest of it is horrifying, right? I don't know. Big eyes usually are more endearing on any kind of artwork, usually, not always. But and then there's a shot. It's really creepy. It's really gross. I get it, but the eyes just seem really, really big for no reason for one of the wargs. But I don't know. It just, and the way when it's moving, I can't really show you a lot of video because I don't want to copyright anything, but it's just so that's why we're doing stills. The animation seemed funky to me. That's why I give it a dislike, if that makes sense. And a lower dislike, because I didn't like that. And then, it starts killing all these elves one by one as their friends are watching. And then he finally grabs the chain and starts pulling it. Of course, he's the hero because he's the main character. Dislike. Just because the whole part, why are elves just dying one by one? Why aren't they fighting it together? You know what I mean? I don't know. They're all warrior elves that have been watching wardens for a while. So anyway, basically he gets it wrapped up in its own chains, and basically, gets it wrapped up underneath the tree. In case he did cut down the tree. It looks like the tree's been cut down. The main warden guy breaks his chain. He says, run for your life, right? He stabs one of the orcs with a stick, which actually I thought was kind of cool. But I mean, I don't know how that twig would have been able to do that. That would have been really impressive. But maybe that's like payback from the tree. Tree's like, here's one of my little sticks. This one's a sword. Sorry. Not really a big fan of that part. But again, his fighting was cool. His like anti-gravity stuff, you know, like again, not super realistic. But then the one guy gets out, but the warg's coming after him. He's like, oh crap, right? The warg's running up. But then he throws a spear, right? The main character kills the warg right next to him. And the guy gets up and runs and says, good job. And then he runs up to the top, the main character, and looks out, and there's orcs out there, which and he's shot by arrows. And it's all sad. And I'm sorry to be sad, the people who are sad about this part, but this is realistic. So I like the fact that they're trying to get out of the trench, and oh wait, there is orcs outside the trench. Of course there's orcs outside the trench. Come on, you guys. And why did the elves know? Like, again, I know the leader did say you need to look out and see what's out above the trench, right? Whoever someone can. So there were things they did that were realistic, but I just felt like them being surprised that there were orcs out there waiting in the trees with arrows wasn't really. So I like the fact that they made him get killed. Like I even though it was sad, I liked that fact. I disliked the fact that they didn't understand, you know, that there would probably be other people outside. And then he gets pulled back down. He's like, no. And then they're like, wait, you know what I mean? Like, don't kill him. We'll bring him to Adar, or whatever this other name is, which they've already told us is another name for Sauron, supposedly. And then we get this glimpse, right here, of a very fair-looking figure that looks like he has elf ears, all right? I have a feeling that this might be the actual Sauron, which is really exciting. So if this is, I'm going to say lower accurate, all right? If it is. And I did like this part, okay? So again, there's a lot more I liked about this episode than really disliked, but there was an overall feeling that I didn't like in this episode. So, and again, I'm going to have to give one more lore negative just for the fact, I already know I already give it, but just one more for the fact that the compression seems a little too much for me. I don't like the fact that compression, if it is the case that Eregion and Arnor are going to fall around the same times, that's 1,600 years apart. I don't think that's a little too much. But anyway, we got through this episode way faster than the other two. We cut it down by a half hour to review it. I hope you guys liked it. I will have all these links to all of these in the description for these things. And anyway, you guys have a wonderful day in Middle-earth, my friends. Thank you so much for joining me today for this review and breakdown. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe if I earned it. Thank you to my wonderful Patreons here. Subscribe button's gonna be there. Next episode will be up there for this playlist, and over there will be a Tale, my main content we do in Lord of the Rings Online with voiceovers. So have a great day in Middle-earth, my friends. Baruch Kazad Kuzad I menu. See ya.